And happy Easter. I guess it's Easter really. Yep. Um, Today promises to be a short class. I know I say this all the time, and we end up spending like 2 hours, but yeah, it's promises to be a short class. We're gonna talk about images today, and it's images are quite important when it comes to design because your images should be able to, tell some kind of story, or your images should. Can that person on mute? It's quite noisy. Okay, thank you. So yeah, your images should be able to tell some kind of story. Not necessarily story, but they should support your text, and your text should also um support your images, right? So let's go into it. Um, we'll just go through some different websites, right? And we'll see the kind of images they use in the site so you can get an idea of everything I'm saying. So I'll share my screen. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen. Can you all see my screen? Okay, perfect. So let's look at some of these websites. By the way, this website is landingfolio.com. So like portfolio, but without the ports, and just put Landing in front of them. So we just go through. So let's look at let's say users, for example. So looking at this, it says we are a community of makers, right? So when it comes to websites, your heading or the hero section, and what I mean by hero section is the first screen or the first part of the screen that shows up when you visit a website, right? So these parts, okay, let's visit the site, and so this part that we can see is called the hero section. And you can see the heading is quite clear. It says we're a community of makers. And then you see like a bunch of different faces, which if you think about it, it's like a community, right? So without even looking at the word community of makers, seeing all of this would give you a sense of something that has to do with a community, yeah? That's one thing about images. You should be able to tell from the image what your website is about. Even if you can't specifically tell that, okay, this is what the website is about, it should lead the user in such a way that they can say, okay, yeah, I think it's about this, and they can be very right. So looking at this next, it says user interviews and user tests made simple. And you can see very well from the image. Sorry, I'm trying to zoom in. Yeah, you can see this is more like a moderated session, right? So she could be the user being interviewed, but she could also be the interviewer and these people the interviewee, right? So it's quite clear what is going on here. So let's look at one more before we go into Figma. Let's see. You can see this, it says express yourself, and you have like a lot of emojis. which is quite, emojis are used for expressions, right? To show how you feel at that moment. So when you're sad, use the sad emoji. When you're laughing, use the laughing emoji. So the text and the images, right? Or the image on your website, for example, should, go hand in hand. Imagine express yourself and an image of a car, maybe like a Tesla. Without looking at the text, express yourself, you'd be like, okay, maybe it's a car company, or maybe it's an electric vehicle company that sells like batteries or something. And then you see express yourself, you'd ask yourself, okay, what's going on, right? Because these two they don't really correlate. So how can you get some of these images in Figma? Let's go over, no, before we go over to Figma, there's a website called unsplash.com. Unsplash.com gives free images for use. So you can see it says the internet source of freely usable images, right? So you can use these images wherever you want to in your design, but it's also a good thing to give credit to the authors or the creators of the images. So you can always tell your developers, like, for example, if you decide to use this image, you can see it's by Fabrizio Lunardi, right? So you can always add this to your alt text. And what alt text means is in code, when you have this image, okay, let me show you let me see if I can see it in code. Mm. Trying to see if I can get it. I'm not a developer, so forgive me. Um, it's a lot of sources. I don't know. But yeah, there's something they call alt, ALT, alt text, and you would see it most times when you have like bad internet, right? So if your internet is bad and the picture doesn't load, you'd see a very small image icon and you will see some kind of text, right? So that text can say something like, let's assume this is in Nigeria, for example. It will say mountains in Nigeria, photo taken by Fabrizio Lunardi, right? And it helps because when it comes to accessibility, if a blind person is using the website, the blind person can see the mountains here. But when the screen reader is reading out everything, so it says on Splash, the internet source of freely usable images, blah, 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 blah. When it comes to the background, it doesn't just say mountains. So depending on what you've put on your alt text, it could say mountains in Nigeria, photo taken by Fabrizio Lunardi, right? So what I'm just trying to point out, aside from accessibility and all that, is when you use images from Unsplash and other free websites, always try to give the creator credits. You won't get sued for not giving them credit, but it's just good. So yeah, you can see they have like a lot of good images which you can let's see, which you can just search for, look for one that fits your website or whatever, and just move from here into Figma. So you can always download it if you want to, or you can just copy the image, right click, copy the image, then go into Figma. So I would go back to Figma just for a second. Let me know if you can see my Figma screen, because I don't know how this application works. Okay, perfect. So I've copied the image. All I have to do is paste, right? And it automatically pastes in Figma. So this means you don't have to download the image all the time, because then it's taking up space on your system. So you can just right click, copy, go to Figma, paste, and that's it. And if you don't want to use Unsplash, there is another website called let me check. This one is specifically for Black images, like Black people, but the name isn't coming to my head right now. I'm sorry. I should have checked this before the class. Just give me 1 second. Okay, in order not to waste time, if I find it, I would send it on Slack as usual. So yeah, if you don't want to go to Unsplash, you can just go to the Figma community and just search for Unsplash or photos. Okay, I already searched for photos, and you would see Unsplash somewhere here, right? And you can just install the plugin. So it has like 1 million installs already. So all you have to do is run the plugin as usual, right? Search for Unsplash. Should come up, and just look for something. Cat, yeah. It's a quite interesting cat. Wait, can you guys see my screen? Yes, nappy.co. Thank Mark. That's it. Nappy.co. Thanks a lot. That's the website. I haven't designed websites in like a long time, so I don't deal with a lot of images or stock images. So yeah, nappy.co is for Black people, because I know you might get to a point where you want to design something for Black people, or maybe the company you're working for is targeting like a Black audience. It won't make sense to use a white person on your website, right? Because you're targeting the Black people. So in that case, it's best to come to nappy.co. They have quite some images, so yeah, it's a really good one. Thanks again, Mark. I really appreciate it. Yep, so that's the plugin on Splash. Another plugin you can use is called Pixels, Pexels. Pixels is also very good. They have like a lot of images. So this just saves you the stress of going to like the website, copying, then pasting. Of course, it's not stressful, but then if you can do it inside of Figma, then yeah, that works. So I think one more plugin you can use is called Photos. Photos as well as, I think, a mix of different libraries. Yeah, so if we search for, let's say, ORS, yeah, you can see it brings out results from Unsplash, from Pixabay, from Pexels, from Flickr, from Google, and you can, I think this Google was recently added because I've not seen it before. But yeah, these plugins give you like free images, right? So it's not really advisable to just go into Google, search for an image, copy and paste, because some of these images have copyright, and you would see it in Google. So if we search for, let's say, a Black man in the office, yeah, and I click on images and I select this first one, you would see it says images may be subject to copyright. Yeah. So except you go into the website and it tells you it's free, which of course is not, because you can see there's a watermark on it, I wouldn't advise you just come here, copy, and paste in your design, because of course nobody might get to see it, but yeah, it's best to not do it, because if the company sees it, it's an opportunity for them to make money so they can sue. So that's why it's best to go into like Unsplash and these other free websites. Yeah, Joel, I'll send the links to the Slack channel after the class. Or let me just do that here on the so on splash.com you have nappy.co, and for the plugins on Splash as well, you have pixels, you have photos. Yeah. So we talked about using the right images for your website here. So if it's a car company, for example, make sure you're using like a car image or something that tells what the website is about. And the link I showed you guys was, I think I closed it already. It's landingfolio.com. Let me put that in the chat as well in case you want to see it. Landingfolio.com. And you can just, maybe after this cohort, you're tasked with doing something. You can just come here, check the industry, and see the kind of images people are using for, for their websites and all. Right? So this says unleash your music, and you can see a DJ. So it has to do something with maybe a party, an event, something that has to do with music. So make sure your images are always, complementary to the text, and not only the error section. Every other place where you have to use images, make sure that they are complementary and not just something random. Another plugin I would like to talk about is Downsize. Now, the thing about images, and specifically from all these high resolution websites, is that when your developers come into your Figma file, of course, you might have to set up the export and all that. So you might set your export settings to like 2x, or you can have 2x, 1x, depending on what the developer wants, 3x, blah, blah, blah. When they export this image, the file can be as large as sometimes 5 MB, 3 MB, and all that. Which you might say, it's quite small. Yeah, it seems small, but the problem is when these images are being implemented, into the website, especially if it's an image every website, it's gonna take a lot of time for the website to load, right? So that's why it's good to always optimize the images, even in Figma or before bringing it into Figma. And there's a plugin to do that. So what you can do is from the community, install Downsize, right? So what Downsize does is basically to compress the size of the image before you set it up for export. So you can see compress, resize. So you just click on compress, and you can decide to, if you want it like 80 or you want to take it down to like really, really small quality. So depending on the number you put in here, it tells you the kind of quality you get. So Downsize compresses the images so it becomes smaller in size while trying to maintain quality. Right? So now it's 19% less. Another one you can use is called Tiny Compressor, Tiny Image Compressor. Julius, can you mute your mic?
Cool.
Okay. So Tiny Image Compressor also does the same thing. It has the quality and all that. And another thing I use Tiny Image Compressor for is for PDFs, right? So when you create a PDF in Figma and you directly export using the export function. So if I change this to PDF, for example, and I export this as a PDF, the problem is it's the size it exports it at becomes very large. Like even if there's no image on it, it's just text, it comes out really large. And what I do is I use this plugin, Tiny Image Compressor, to compress the PDF so it like cues the size from as large as maybe 20 MB to as low as 3 MB, for example. So Tiny Image Compressor and Downsize, you can use that for compressing the size of your images. So I'll put that in the chat as well. Tiny Image Compressor and Downsize. Another thing you might want to learn about images is that, sorry, I'm looking for something. Okay. Another thing you want to know about images is that you can always adjust the size, or you can always adjust the size of your images. And what I mean by that is, let's assume this is we want to fix this dog into this circle, right? I don't need to open the plugin again and put the dog's picture in here. One thing I can do is Control Alt C, for example, and Control Alt V. So what that does is it copies the properties from this image. And you can see that for this, we actually add a cat picture initially, yeah? And this color. So it copied everything into this place. So we still have the cat and we still have the color itself. And if you hold down Alt and double click, it brings out this crop option for you. So you can decide to crop the image. You can decide to crop the image at will. This is circle, I guess that's why it's yeah. You can crop the image, you can say you want just the eyes, and that's it. So you can either just hold Alt and double click, or just double click. Initially you need to hold Alt, but I think recently they did such that once you double click, it brings this pop-up for you. And another thing you can see is that you have fit, fill, crop, tile. So let's explore those a bit. So I would use maybe like this, and Control Alt C, Control Alt V. So if I double click and I change it from crop to fit, you can see what happens. Let me turn off the cat. So it tries to fit the entire image into this shape. Fill just obviously fills it up. And tile, what does tile do? I don't know, I never use it. So yeah, you can always just play around with these options, and you can always play around with the filters as well. So maybe you're not satisfied with all of this, you can just play around with it, the saturation, blah blah blah. So yeah, you can see it's just like a quick filter, sort of. That's if you know what you're doing, you can just play around with it. Yep, another thing you can learn is masking images. So if you have a square and you want to mask this into this, of course you can just use Control Alt C, Control Alt V. Yusuf, what did you miss, or what didn't you understand? If you can unmute, you can just talk, or if you want to type, it's fine. Yusuf, are you there? Okay, let's go on. So if I want to mask this, yeah, just type your message in your question in the chat. I want to go back to it. So you can select both of them, right click, and you can see use as mask. Where did the image go? We can't find it because the shape was on top of the image, right? But if we swap the order, so take this to the back, right? So it is behind the image, and we do the same thing, use as mask. It masks the image, right? And you can see here from the layers panel, it calls it a mask group. And you can see this is the shape where the image fits into. So if you select the image, you can actually move it. Can you see? You can move it and say, okay, you want just this part, or move it wherever you want to. And it gets interesting. You can get creative. Okay, but do you understand it now, Yusuf? So you can get a bit creative with it. Let's say you have high rise buildings. Awesome. Um, hope this is quite big, but yeah, let's say you have something like this. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. So let's take this image. Sorry. Right. I can also mask images into text. Um, so like this. Right. So you get like this kind of effect. Of course, you can do what you want to do. Maybe you have the main image at the background. I don't do this often, so um, I'm just trying to see what I can come up with. I think I'm doing trash. Yeah. If you feel I'm doing trash, just let me know in the chat. But yeah, you can, of course, do something like this. This could be your website, hero section, for example. This isn't, yeah, you can have like your CTA, for example, that says something. This can say maybe book it or something. I don't know. I'm just. So yeah, that's about masking. You can get very creative with it. Masking into text, masking into shapes, and different things. Um, what else do we have to discuss today? Let me just go through. We've talked about optimizing images, and I mentioned we can use Downsize. I mentioned we can use Tiny Image Compressor. There are also online nice illustrations. Yeah, we get to that now. There are also online tools. So if you just go on Google and search for, if you just go on Google, search for compress image online, you can see you have like a lot of options you can choose from. So all you have to do is just click on one, upload your image, and it compresses it for you. This is compress PDF. Did I click on PDF? Sorry. Yeah, you can just upload your file and it compresses it for you. I used to use this back in the days before I got to learn about the plugins. But yeah, it is what it is. We talked about choosing the right images. So make sure your images are complementary to your text. So I gave an example. If you are talking about food, for example, you're a restaurant and the image beside your text is a car or it's flowers or something like that. They don't complement each other, right? So your images need to pass across the right emotions and the right message such that when someone sees just the image, they can have an idea of what your products or your website or your services is all about. And we talked about what else? The plugins, right, for compressing and for also finding images. We mentioned nappy.co, we mentioned Splash, we mentioned Pexels as a plugin, we mentioned Photos as a plugin. Another one you can do is for avatars, right? So maybe you're building a social platform or something that has to show like people's profile. So you have like different people's profile. Maybe it's a chat screen where you have like the name of the person, the image, the name, image, blah, blah, blah. You can just select all, and there's a plugin called Avatars. All you have to do is run it, and it automatically puts in avatars or the kind of pictures people would use for their profile images. It does that for you. I think there's one more called can't remember. Let me just check. Let me go to my plugins. I think content body does something similar, but that's not what I was looking for. Mm. Yeah, let's look at content body. I don't know if it's this one or content trail. I really can't remember. I think I had two of those. Yeah, content trail. It has like images. You can see it has photos, avatars, logos, and a lot of options here. So avatars male, I think it has avatars female as well. But you can always just click on one and, apply all, and it automatically fills it for you. So yeah, I'll put that in the chat as well. Content reel and avatars. Yeah, I think there's one called UI faces, but I don't have that installed at the moment. I'm trying to think of any other plugin that is quite useful. Let's check the community. I haven't used most of this. Okay, user profile. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, user profile. It does the same thing. So I'll put that in the chat as well. User profile. Yeah, and UI faces. And so yeah, you have a lot of options. All you have to do is go to the community and check for something. Then illustrations. right? So depending on the direction your company or your client wants to go, or the direction you feel is better, you can also use illustrations for your design, right? You can use 2D illustrations, you can use 3D illustrations. And my favorite is called Story Sets by Freepik. Story Set by Freepik. It has like a whole lot of illustrations. But when it comes to illustrations, you'd have to be careful about something. Of course, I think it applies in images as well, but it's more obvious in illustrations. When choosing illustrations, make sure that the illustrations are of the same style. Now, what I mean is this. Let's create a fake website, right? And for the very first part of my website, uh, let me just steal this just to be fast. Let's assume this is my hero section, yeah? Turn off this guy. Let's just add a few. Why isn't this working? Good. And I come here, I search for buildings. Hopefully they have something good. And I use this illustration, yeah? Forgive my terrible websites, but I just want to show an example. And the next part of the website says something like, I don't know, um, nothing is coming to my head, but it says something, yeah? Built by a skyscraper or after price, just as an example. And the illustration I use is something like this. Now, this doesn't look bad, but from a visual perspective, it's very easy to tell that this illustration is not of the same style as this illustration. And I've seen people do this, people make this mistake. So you should always make sure that when you're using illustrations, use one that is very flexible, one that has everything you need, right? So I shouldn't be using this illustration together with this because they have different styles. The same thing goes for icons as well. I don't know if we talked about icons, but make sure the icons are from the same family. So you cannot use material design icons and also let me think of something that's way different. Maybe material design and feather icons, for example. There are two different styles. It will make your design look very inconsistent, right? Then imagine you go ahead to use something like this. Right. Okay. Yeah. You can tell that this is different from this, and this is different from this. So always make sure that your illustrations are consistent across board, right? So of course, buildings are quite hard to get illustrations. I don't know, like if you have like their websites you can pay for to get like a lot of illustrations. But because I've used this particular one, I make sure I look for something. Of course, it has to go with what I'm doing. Like it has to go with the text and all of that. But looking at this and looking at this, you can tell they are from the same family. Of course, you can always change the color if you want to, but just wanted to let you know that your illustrations should always come from the same family. So yeah, that's story set by FreePic, and you can always tell you have the different types of illustrations. So if you click on this, it shows you just this type. This shows you just this type and all. So you have to be like very careful when selecting your illustrations. Make sure you're not selecting one from here and like one from here and one from here, because you begin to look very inconsistent. Another one I think is on Draw, but I don't think I have on Draw installed. I don't. So let's just install on Draw, and I'm not a big fan of on Draw, but they don't have it anymore. Or is it Adobe XD that has on Draw? I think so. But anyways, you can always go to ondraw.io, I guess. Ondraw.co.co, and you would see a lot of illustrations. So you click on Browse now. You can see they have like a whole lot of illustrations, and I'm sure you've seen these illustrations in a lot of designs, a lot of websites. So they're like very, very common, and I think that's why I don't really like it. But it's good. It's open source. Someone is putting a lot of work into it, and we appreciate the person's efforts. So yeah, ondraw.co is another website for free illustrations. Ondraw.co, then FreePic. Let me see, story set by FreePic. So storyset.com. Yeah, you can see like a whole lot. I don't know if there's a paid version because I rarely visit the website. I just use the plugin. But yeah, you have it here as well. Storysets.com. I'm trying to think about websites that have like 3D illustrations. They're quite difficult to get, but I can't remember one on the spot right now. Freepic.com is the parent company of Storyset.com. So yeah, they have like a whole lot of things going on. So you can search for maybe vector illustrations. And you see like a whole lot of things going on. Yeah. But some of them, or a good number of them, are not free. So you can see the premium stuff on it. And do they allow SVG download? Let me see. It didn't specify. So it's probably downloading both. Let me just confirm. I don't think you can see my screen, but yeah. Okay, yeah, true. I remember. So this gives you the EPS file and the PNG. EPS has to do with Adobe Illustrator, right? So you can open this in Adobe Illustrator and use that tool. But another thing you can do is if you get EPS file, you can always go online, search for EPS to SVG converter, and just drag in the EPS file. I use this a lot. Just drag in the EPS and it converts it to SVG for you, so you can use it in Figma, because Figma doesn't support EPS. So yeah, if you come into FreePic, you download it and you see this EPS, you can always do that EPS to SVG converter. And I think you can also specify somewhere that you want just SVG. Let me see. I don't think so. Yeah, so you can always convert it if you get EPS. So yeah, I think that's illustrations. I can't remember where to get 3D illustrations, but I would check it right after the class and definitely send it to the channel as usual. And yeah, you can always edit illustrations as well. So you can say you don't want the clouds, or you don't want something here, or you want to change the color of something. You can just hold down Control and select what you want. Maybe you want the pants to be a different color. You can always do that if you want to. So you don't always have to, use it as it is. You can always make your edits and all of that, right? You can say you want this to be just 2 windows instead of 4. You can take this out. It's 2 windows. So you can always edit all of this. And like I said, the most important thing when it comes to illustrations and even images, make sure they are connected. They look alike. They look like they're from the same style, not just different styles, because then you'd look like you don't know what you're doing. I think that's pretty much it for images and illustrations. Are there any questions so far? Was there anything confusing? Anybody? Let me open the chats channel. Was there anything confusing? Of course, you can also go as far as making your illustrations components, right? And if you're working for a company and you can't seem to find illustrations, like, for example, you need a lot of illustrations with buildings, and StorySet is only offering this too, but you need more. Maybe you need like a constructor working on something and all of that. You can ask your company if they have the budget to, hire an external illustrator who would make like a complete set for you. That's also possible. I've done it before. And like I said, you can always make your illustrations components or even your images. So you can say, remember how I said you can name it? So building slash bro, which is okay. This is house restyling slash bro, but let's just change that to building, right? Building slash house restyling. So you can make them you can make them components. Create a component set called buildings, such that if I take this instance, I can say, no, I don't want it to be this. I want this to be house styling, and I want this to be a bro or something. So yeah, you can always componentize all your illustrations and, just click and change from here. So I think we talked about components in the very first class, if I'm correct. So try to always componentize everything, because it makes your life easier in the long run. So yeah, Marcus sent some websites on the chat channel. And another thing is, come to the community. There are always tons of stuff. So if we search for 3D, there are different files. You can see this 3D icons, metaverse 3D icon sets, 3D male and female character. Like, there are a lot of files, a lot of plugins that you can just check out. So whenever you feel stuck, you need something, come to the community. You will definitely see something there. Max says Sally. Okay, you can see 3D illustration pack and all of that. So yeah, the community is like your Google for design. So before you go into Google to search for something, you can always check the community, check the files, check the plugins. You'll definitely see something you need. Then if you can see, then yeah, go to Google. That's what I'm going to advise. I think that's pretty much it. Are there any questions concerning this class and maybe previous classes? You need clarification on something because we have like an hour and 3 minutes left, so we can just run through. Any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I would say thank you guys for joining. I believe I kept to my words today. Yeah. And congratulations on, I don't know, the course. I believe this is my last class with you guys, but I don't know if you have like more classes. Okay, Yusuf has an issue. What? You can just unmute and talk if that is okay by you, so we can, run through it. So I hope you guys have really learned a lot from the cohort itself. Not necessarily from me, but like from all the teachers as well. Thank you, Yinka. Thank you. Yusuf, what's your issue with auto layouts? Yusuf, if you can unmute to make things fast and we have less awkward silence, I think that would make more sense. But while you, yeah, what exactly is the issue? Or do you just want me to, talk about it in general? Okay, so auto layouts, a quick one. Auto layouts makes your life easy, right? So I have a text. I want to turn this into a button, for example. All I have to do is press Shift A or just right click and auto layout. Yeah. And this is a frame, right? Auto layout is a frame. And it's the same thing with components. When you componentize something, it's actually a frame. And when you make something auto layouts, you get to see this panel on the right hand side, which wasn't there before, right? And you see spacing between items, padding around items. We talked about padding, margins in the very first class, if you can remember. We talked about this, yeah? And I remember saying padding is the space inside, margin is the space outside, right? So let's give this a color for now. Let's just give it something like this. If I increase this from 8, you see the spacing inside increases, right? It increases. That's padding. And if I, of course, this is like it's increasing on all sides. So left, right, center, not center, left, right, top and bottom. But I can also be very specific by coming into this place. So I can say I want the top to be like 32. I want this to be 8. I want this to be 2. I want this to be 50. For example, you can specify. And there's also this option of space between items, but you wouldn't see anything because we have just one element inside. But let's keep going. Right? Let's come back here. So if I duplicate this, by holding Alt and Shift. Yeah, so this is auto layout. This is also another auto layout. I can make this auto layout, right? So they are the same thing. And auto layout is really good because in code, this is going to look something like this, just eye level. This box is going to have its own div. It's called a div, yeah. Of course, HTML5 is going to be a button, but let's just assume it's not a button. And this one is going to have its own div, right? But now I put both of them together in the same, they are now in one auto layout. So you have this guy, you have this guy, and this is now the parent frame because I selected both of them and made them auto layout. So in code, it should look something like this. So let's assume like this. Sorry, I'm bringing code into into this, but yeah, you would understand. So this is what it looks like in code because the both of them are now inside this div. And it's still the same thing because when you look at the layers panel, this can be one, and this can be another one. Right? So if I close this, it automatically closes the both of them because they're inside this parent frame, right? So let's leave the divs for a minute. Now we can play with this guy because this is more like the margin between both of them, the spacing outside, right? And then we can say, okay, I want this guy to be on this side. I don't want it to be at the bottom. All I have to do is change this from the vertical direction to horizontal direction. And I can as well play with the spacing. Do you understand up to this point, Yusuf? Before I go too far. Are you there, Yusuf? Okay, perfect. Then, as usual, I can play with this as well, right? And I can as well give it a color, right? Another thing I can do is we can come here, now that we have two items, we can change this from packed to space between. And we can change this from maybe org contents. You can also play with this. Why isn't this working? Hmm. I want to give an example of the fill container um, option. I don't think we talked about that. Okay. So org content basically means it adjusts to whatever you type in here, right? I know we talked about this in that class. And what other thing did we talk about? Yeah. So this is for the horizontal direction. This is for the vertical direction. So that means if I hit space, it should org the content, right? That is org content. And what else did we talk about? Because I know I didn't go deep into auto layout. So if I change this from all context to fixed height and I start typing, it breaks out. You understand? And if I change this back to all content, it fills it up. What else did we talk about in that class? Let me see. I don't think we went further than that. So is there any question? Do you have any other question, Yusuf? Because I don't think we went further than that, because the field container and of course fixed width, fixed height I already showed. But field container has to do with let me see. I have a frame and I change this. Yeah, this is set to field container. You can see. If I change this to field container as well, it automatically, divides it equally. So change this to, let me say, all content. This fills the container. So if I do this, it keeps filling the container. Let me drag this outside of this. It keeps filling the container. And if I decide to change this to fill, it divides it into two, right? So they both have like equal spaces. So if I control D, you can see equal spaces. So you can always play around with this. You can say this is all content, this is all content. This always fills the container. You want this two to fill the container, this is all content. So you can always play around with those these features, right? You can set this one. So you can say, for example, you don't want the text to go past this part when you start typing. Currently it's in all content, so that means if I keep typing, it goes out. Yeah, you can change that to fixed width, for example, and say, okay, you want it to stop here. It should go out. It shouldn't, right? Because it's on fixed width. But instead of fixed width, the problem with fixed width is that now we have a defined width for this text. If, for example, I have to increase this, you would see the width remains the same. But we don't want that to happen. We want it to do what? To fill the container. So we change this from fixed width to fill container. So if I bring this down, it adjusts with it. But if it's on fixed width, it means each time I make an adjustment, I have to, adjust this all the time. I don't want that. That's why it's good to use fill container. So irrespective of my adjustment, it adjusts with it. So yeah, it can get really complex with auto layout sometimes, but just try to play with it. So you just have to understand this is like a child element. It has its own, they call it resizing. The parent element would also see resizing, and we call this the grandparent, for example, has its own, settings. So each layer has its own settings. So if you apply a setting here, it doesn't mean it's going to affect these guys in the way you want it to do. So you always have to check each one of them. You want this as fill container. You want this as fill container. You can decide to change this to fixed width if you want. This is going to remain as fill container. You can change this from fixed width to something else or content. So you just always have to check each of them to make sure that you are, you're getting what you want. Is that I don't think we talked about fill container in the first class, but do you guys understand what I've done? Yusuf, do you understand? Is it clearer? Does anyone still have any questions about auto layout? Like I said, it can get quite complex, but yeah, just make sure you're always checking your settings. Okay, any other question? Does anyone have any other question? Yeah, we talked about variants, shadows, shapes, colors, naming components, naming local styles. That is, when I say local styles, this guys. We talked about, yeah, typography, how to, the plugins, how to, can I cover prototyping on how to change numbers like e-commerce when you click on plus and the number changes? Using illustrations on splash screens slash onboarding. That's pretty much, I'll come to you, Mark, but that's pretty much, there's really no big deal, or not big deal. There's really no, should I say, standard per se. You just have to make sure you're doing, okay, let's assume I want to make this an onboarding screen, yeah, on mobile. All I have to do is, of course, I need to have like my status bar and all that. Let me just copy it from here. Ah, don't I have it here? Yeah, so this is an example of onboarding. So I'd have to do it again. So there's no particular standard. Just make sure, like I said, make sure your onboarding is, I mean, the illustration of the image you're using, correlates with the text. So this says no more market stress. And you can see this lady is in the comfort of her home, and there's a delivery guy bringing it to her. This is, I mean, it's aligns with normal market stress, yeah? This says split costs with friends, and you can see this girl has some money on her side, the guy has some money on his side, they're both doing something on their phone, they align with each other. This says fast delivery. You can see this as a delivery guy, for example, going to a customer's location to deliver something. And refer and earn, you can see they're both celebrating because they've made some money. They've made some money. So yeah, you just have to make sure your illustrations, go hand in hand with your text. The same thing for images. So if I was to use images over here, I would have to use something that illustrates, normal market stress, split cost with friends, fast delivery, refer and earn. Did I answer your question, Kelvin? Or did you mean something else? Okay, perfect. Um, Mark, how to change on how to change numbers using prototypes. Let me see if I can just get a counter from this part. I just need a counter. Where's the cut? Solo cut and checkouts. Okay, so let me just take this. A quantity stepper. Oh, I gave it a nice name. That's nice. Okay, so for this, I used grouping instead of auto layout, but it's been a long time, so yeah, it's okay. So I think what you can do for this, let me see the right approach. Yeah, you can do something like this. Let me put this into a frame. I just want them to be like separate. This is a frame, this is a frame. I want to make this a frame as well. You understand why I want to make it a frame. Yeah. Or before I do make it a frame, before I make it a frame, you can do something like this. This is 1. Let's call this 2. Call this 3. Right now they're outside of the frame, but I would move them inside. So what I mean is, you can see 2, 3, 4, they're outside of this stepper frame. I believe this should work. If not, I'm disgracing myself on YouTube. But yeah, so I'm gonna take the 4 of them and call this, I frame everything. We just call it numbers. And I would select clip content, right? And I will, okay, that's strange. Oh, sorry, totally forgot. Alt Control and clip, perfect. Yep. So we can, I'll just shorten, oh, what am I doing? Expand, sorry. I just want to make this so that when we view it in prototype mode, it's clearer. Let me just give this a dark background for now. Yeah. So I can create another screen. And then I hope I'm doing the right thing, really. I want to select everything. Yes. I think I'm doing the right thing. I'm not disgracing myself on YouTube. Interesting. Kelvin, what illustrations are you talking about? Selecting everything. I'm sure you can even see the animation from me just moving the numbers. Are you following what I'm doing, Mark? Let me know if you need me to, come back. So we can now illustrate and say, when I click on the plus, come here and smart animate. Of course, you can always play around with the animation. Let's say ease in and out. On minus, come back here. On plus, come here. On minus, come back here. On plus, come here. On minus, come here. So I think this should work. Yeah, flow 1. So let's see what happens. So when we click this, look at, I didn't disgrace myself. Hallelujah. So yeah, this is what you wanted, yeah, Mark? Something like this. Yeah. So did you understand why I made certain decisions? Or let me just explain why I made certain decisions to everyone. So the first thing I did was, or let me say the most important thing that I did was to make sure that the numbers are in a frame, right? A whole lot of work. Well, of course, you can always make this a variant and componentize it such that you don't have all these screens. You can make it a variant, but wait, can I do that? Interactive components. I can, but the problem would be it won't be as specific as this. So I think for your prototype, you might just want to do like maybe 2, 3, not necessarily, because you don't want to do like several screens up to 10 and all that. So yeah, there should be a shortcut to do all of this, but yeah, this is just the way I can think of it right now. So the most important thing is putting the numbers in a frame. So let me just duplicate this. That's the most important thing, putting them in a frame. And the other thing is to clip the frame. So once the numbers are outside of this size, or once any element is outside of this size, you don't get to see them. And for the next screen, what I did was select the numbers, right? So 1, 4, 3, 2, and just move it up. So I just kept pressing up until 2 showed up. The same thing for this, the same thing for this. And you know, with Smart Animate, they need to have the same name. The layer needs to have the same name. So you can see it's called numbers here. It's called numbers here. It's called numbers here. It's called numbers here. So that's why the animation was smooth. If they had like different names, then it wouldn't be as smooth as that, or it might not even work properly. But yeah, you can do that. You know, you can use this method to do several stuff. So maybe on your website you have I don't know if I did it here. I'm not very certain. Let me see. I don't think I prototyped this as well. But yeah, it's kind of like the same technique. So for example, you have onboarding screens and you want it to, you know, you want this image to come out just by the side or something like that. You can use the same technique by putting this in a frame and, you know, just clipping the frame such that when the user clicks on this, this automatically, you know, slides in. And of course, you can use interactive components for that as well. But yeah, you get the point. So any other questions? Anything I can help with? Alignment. What do you want to know about alignment, Yusuf? Aligning what exactly? I mentioned, I think was during typography, when you have short texts, you can align to the center, but when the text is really long, don't align to the center. Align from the left because people lift. You're about to stop sharing. No, I don't want to stop. People read from left to right, aside from, you know, I think Arabic and Persian and all of that, they read from right to left. But yeah, people read from left to right, so you should always align like this. But of course, if you have a table, I know I talked about table, and you have numbers, your numbers should be right aligned, not left aligned. What else did we talk about? Or what do you want to know about alignments yourself? If there are any more questions, you can just put it on the chat so we can wrap up at 12:30 on Fairly. I think that's 11:30 in Nigeria, I guess. Okay, since no one is responding, thank you guys. It was fun having to do all of this with you guys. And I'm sure, as you can tell, I don't prepare like notes or stuff like that to teach. It's more like coming freely so you can see my shortcomings, and you know, no one is perfect, right? That's why I do things like this. So yeah, just to know, like, no one is perfect. People make mistakes. The people you look up to up there also make mistakes. No one knows it all. And I also used it as a way to, you know, refresh my mind with the basics. Yeah. So going back to the basics and trying to understand things, because if you miss the basics, you would you'd miss it. Yeah. If you miss the basics, you miss it. I'm out of motivational quotes for today, but but yeah, you get what I mean anyways. The onboarding for those screens is also from Story Sets by Freepik. Yeah, it's also from Story Sets by Freepik. But yes, guys, if there are no more questions, can you see this, Oyinda? It's all, yeah. If there are no more questions, I want to wish you guys happy Easter, and I know wish you the best of luck in this journey. It's not going to be easy, but just keep doing what you do. Practice, put your work out there, make sure that people see you actually doing something. Don't be in a rush, because a lot of people are after tech money, but the truth is you have to take your time, make sure you know what you're doing, and get your stuff together. Why am I giving motivational quotes? I'm sorry. Design Paul. Kemi, do you have any anything to say, or should I just wrap up the class? I really suck at motivational quotes. I'm sorry. Kemi, are you there? Looks like Kemi's not here. Okay, guys. I guess we'll see on Slack, or probably when I get to review your designs. I hope I can find some time to do that today or tomorrow, or sometime next week. So enjoy your weekend, and have a great Easter. Bye, guys.